Hey there, and welcome into another exciting episode of A for Effort. I'm your host, Matt, and as always, we start off giving thanks to our unofficial sponsor of the podcast, AMC A-List. $19.95 a month gets you 3 movies a week at local AMC theaters in your area. Check AMC.com for theater listings and offer availability. On today's episode, we're going to break down a movie I was super interested in, and that's Ad Astra. Now, this movie came out a couple weeks ago, and I know that it was well reviewed by most critics, and audiences just didn't see the interest. And I have to agree with the audiences. I didn't see the interest in it either. Again, I was super hyped for this movie. I love sci-fi, Brad Pitt, like all these things mixed well into a movie that I thought I was going to enjoy. Turns out that it was slow and it dragged, and it had literally no overarching plot. Like the plot was there. The plot was basic. You have a father who went off into space to find life, disappeared. A son who followed in his footsteps, and now the son has a chance to find the father 30 years later, and that's the basics of it. But then there's like how we get from point A to point B to point C to point D to point E. That is just like ugh, and it drags and it drags and it drags and it drags, and there's some plot points like the space crazy monkeys or the moon pirates that are just like, is this stuff really happening? Am I actually witnessing these events take place? But they're not predicated to the story in any way. It was like, how do we get from point A to point E, and how do we make it interesting in the middle? And they just added these elements to it that just didn't work for me. And like the basics of the father-son story are interesting and very straightforward in narrative, but like it doesn't work on a sci-fi level. Like they could have just made this movie and not had it been in space, but for some reason they wanted it to be in space. And okay, you're introducing the space element and astronauts and the fact that both men are astronauts and everything, and there's a very Blade Runner-esque test that the astronauts have to take to find a baseline to make sure they're okay to perform these tasks in space. And I just didn't feel like any of it made any sense, and it wasn't coherent enough together to make for a decent enough movie. You know, I love Brad Pitt. I love his energy in most movies, but this movie, it felt like he was phoning it in, and maybe that's just the way he was playing the character. But I didn't enjoy the movie I saw, and that's hard for me because I love all sci-fi. I love Brad Pitt. I think that the two should have mixed well together, but it didn't, and it ended up being a just awful film. And you know, for that it gets an A minus. And again, you introduce space pirates, you introduce pirates on the moon. Like you get to the moon, so like I said, you got point A, home, Earth, point B, the moon. Get to the moon, you're trying to get from point B to point C, which is Mars, and you got to travel to the dark side of the moon to do so. And the guy makes a passing remark about, oh, there might be space pirates, and sure enough, the space pirates show up. There's no reason for them other than to add some excitement and an action beat to this from point B to point C sequence. So then we get to point C, which is where he's going to go to Mars, right? So we're in the middle of going from B to C, and we have the space monkeys, like the crazy space monkeys, and that's the next action beat from between point B and point C. And we get to point C, there's an action beat leaving from point C to point D, which is Saturn. And then like a lot of it like just felt like it was forced, and that again gets it in A minus. I just didn't enjoy this movie. And you know, I love a lot of movies, but this one in particular I didn't. And that sucks because I wanted to, but again, it's just not a good movie. Thank you for sticking with us. I know it's been a couple of weeks since I posted the last episode. You know, we've had a tough couple of weeks trying to get episodes posted. It's been a really busy work schedule outside of YouTube. So thank you for sticking with A for Effort. I have been your host, Matt. Check out all the rest of the videos on the YouTube channel. Like, subscribe, share, comment. Thank you to all of you that do like, subscribe, and share. check out the Geekly Effort, where we've been posting weekly episodes. I will also be on another podcast to talk more about that in the coming weeks. Thank you so very much. Again, my name was Matt. I'm your host. Come back to us next time on another exciting episode of A for Effort, where we will always have quality movie reviews.